course you decide. And I genuinely hope that majority of the class will decide to be founders of startups, because that's the way forward. Then we will delve properly into how to start a startup, and we'll start by um, discussing the idea. Remember, I told you there are four main parts of starting a startup, and that's idea stage, product, team, and execution. So we are going to start with idea, and I'm going to streamline this as um, possible, so you really, really get the concept of this whole startup thing you're hearing about. So for under the ideation, we are going to do a little bit of classwork, which is brainstorming ideas, and I'm going to teach you how to create a business plan. I'm going to teach you also how to create a startup model. Now, why I say startup model is because a startup model is mostly different from a traditional business model. So you're going to know the difference, and you're going to know how to create a startup model for the products you're going to be building. Still in week three, we are going to also learn about products. So when you have an idea, the next phase is to have a prototype, and then you build a product, which is your MVP. You're also going to learn bootstrapping for your startup, the concept of bootstrapping and what it comes with. And then we are going to create um, an MVP. So, mind you, from the ideation stage, we are going to be working on a product together. You agree with us, like you and I will brainstorm, get a startup idea, and start building it to product stage and build an MVP. I know. I hope you have designers and people that code there. So I don't think it's going to be difficult. Then finally in week four, we are going to discuss team and execution. On that team, I'm going to teach you the basics of hiring for your startup. This is quite intermediate, but I'm going to teach you the basics of hiring for startups. I'm going to teach you about how you split equity amongst founders. Also going to teach you about some couple of collaboration tools that you can use as a team building a product. Then execution. I'm going to teach you about how you're going to talk to your users, because as a startup or as a startup founder, your primary objective is to talk to your users. So you're going to learn that. You're also going to learn the things that don't scale for your startup. Um, Also, you learn startup pivoting. One of the most interesting things about a startup is the ability to pivot. And I'm going to teach you what that means and how you can use that to, how you can leverage that for your business or your startup. So now the question is, what is a startup? And I'd like to throw that back to the class before I continue. So I need about three persons to tell me what they think a startup is. So I want this session to be interactive. So please.
Okay, I would say it's a new organization or business.
Sorry.
Is a new organization or business.
Oh, okay, that's good. Two more answers.
Think that part of certain basic things to put in place. If you have an idea to go into a business, basic things for you to put in place before you begin.
Wow, that's interesting. That makes sense. So, is there anybody that wants to contribute?
Okay, I
What
would
is it?
say is a startup is a new development, is a development in a new growing company.
Okay, okay. This is getting more interesting, and I feel like having two more answers. From the ladies behind. Can you say something about a startup? What do you think is a startup? When you hear about what startup?
Okay, I can say that startup is the process of setting something in motion.
Wow, beautiful, beautiful. That's interesting. That's interesting. So, any other person before we proceed? Okay. Um, that was lovely. I like all of your answers, and I think you're halfway there. Okay, so in the world of startups, in startup ecosystem, like people like me say, there's this misconception about what a startup is, and people liking a startup to an SME, a small and medium scale enterprise. Um, so the term startup is always misused for starting a small business with low or secured capital. And that's simply what an SME is, a business that has a secured capital, either low or secured. For an MSME, it starts with a low capital. For an SME, it starts with still low capital, but medium size, you have large, and large businesses, you have large capitals. So people always misunderstand startup to be that starting phase of a business, um, which is totally understandable. But in the startup ecosystem, that is not entirely correct. Being an entrepreneur and starting a business is great, but it often comes with constraints and certainty. In the sense that most most SMEs or businesses, they operate in a model that constrains their scalability, and that doesn't mean they won't be profitable, or they won't be big, or they won't solve people's problems, but it has a certain way of making money and constraints the way they are supposed to scale the business. For startups, it is otherwise. Now, let's dive deep into what a startup is and most basic definition of a startup. A startup is a company that has the potential to grow exponentially fast with high uncertainty. So, I'm going to explain this. I'm going to read it again. A startup is a company that has the potential to grow exponentially fast with high uncertainty. So the keywords here are potential, growth, and uncertainty. In the startup ecosystem, most startups that succeed, they have these three features in them. For example, Google. founders of Google, Larry Page and his co-founder, they saw a potential in building a search engine that traditional search engines did not see or did not have. And they went into that space. Now, it was highly uncertain if they were going to make it or they were going to not succeed, if they were going to succeed or not. It was highly uncertain at that stage. But there was a potential there. That potential was how to grow fast as a search engine, how to make that product develop fast. Now, I would liken that to Google and a barbershop. So, as a startup, you have the potential to grow rapidly, to reach more audience, to scale across borders. But a traditional business, in this case, I'm using a barbershop, you're solving a problem by cutting people's hair, which happens frequently every day. But somebody in Lagos cannot come to your shop frequently to cut his hair. You cannot render these services to somebody in Ghana. You cannot render these services to somebody in South Africa, or let's say somebody in the US. Why? Because it has a lot of dependency on personnel. You have to do it physically. That's the difference between uh, traditional businesses or MSMEs or SMEs with a startup. A startup has the ability to scale, to grow fast, and reach more audience. Now, as a startup, for you to grow rapidly, you need to make something you can sell to a big market. So think about this deeply. For you to grow rapidly as a startup, you need to build a product that you can sell to a large market. And to build products like that, you have to sit down, brainstorm with these points. So for a company to grow really big, it must, first of all, one, solve a problem lots of people have. Two, build something lots of people need. That something here should be your product. Sorry. So as a startup, for you to grow fast, you must solve a problem that people have, lots of people. So you must do a brainstorming session which covers your research and analysis. Then you come up with a solution to a problem that a lot of people are encountering. And then you build something that a lot of people need. Then the second point of a startup is reaching your your target audience, reach and serve all those people with your products. So these are two crucial and important um, points of starting a startup as opposed to the traditional business. Now, how do you achieve this? How do you make, how do you grow a startup? How do you solve a problem that so many people have, and how do you reach them? So to achieve point B, you can write code, build softwares. Building a software making it accessible online can give you point B, which is reach a larger audience. Like now we're using Teams for this meeting. Um, I don't think they have I don't think this will be possible without technology or building without the software. So I can be in a remote location and also be subscribing to this software itself. So that's really, really scalable. And imagine the tons of users that they have on their database. Let me give you an example. Okay, before the example, if you're building a product and you're writing a software, or yeah, you're building a software product and you have an intention to reach a large number of people, there's also the point A part to answer, whereby is that product really solving a problem, or do these people I'm building this product for need this product? I hope you understand. Now, let me give an example. If, let's say, you're building a language model for um, people that are from Bonny to understand Ibane, it's a very good product. You have users. People will definitely subscribe to that. People that are from Bonny or River State would definitely relate to that. That want to learn the language, they would definitely relate to that. But can that product reach a larger audience? What's your user cap? Can it be sold to people outside of this region? So these are the questions you're going to ask when you want to start building a startup. Fine, the product is good, the software is good, it translates English to Ibani, translates Ibani to English. Very perfect, solid software. You have your first users. People are your neighbors, your people around you, people in River State. They can be interested in using it. How about people outside of River State? How about people outside of Nigeria? Will that product serve them? And remember, a startup must have the potential to grow fast and scale. So how do you scale that product to people outside of River State? That's what you should be thinking about. Then let's say you build a product that the same language model, but it translates any language to English. You're building the same language model. It translates any language, or let's cap it to just River State. It translates any indigenous dialect in River State to English and vice versa. That product gives you more users as opposed to the one that translates English to Ibani and Ibani to back English. I hope you understand the concept. If there's any question, also keep it. Like I'll attend to that in the next few minutes. But I hope you understand what I'm trying to explain. An example of a software for the latter, the software that can translate to other languages, Duolingo. I don't know if you know Duolingo.
Yes.
I don't know if you know Duolingo. So Duolingo is a software that translates that teaches different languages. So that is scalable because uh, it encompasses different languages. Now, the aspect of point A and point B, most businesses are tightly constrained in A or B. So what this means is they're either doing point A or they're doing point B. So they're either solving problems for the smaller scale or they're building softwares and not solving problems for the larger scale. So it's either A or B for most businesses. And that doesn't mean they can't be successful. Don't get me wrong. They can still be successful as a business, but they are not startups. The one distinctive feature about a successful startup is that they are not constrained by either A or B. So, as a potential founder, you need to find out balance between point A and point B while building your startup. Now, there are terminologies and glossaries for building a startup. But before we go into that, I'd like to entertain any question. Is there any question from you guys? I'm open to like.
Any question? No question yet, sir.
Okay.
Okay, there's a question. All right, go ahead.
So you said to grow really big as a startup, you must solve a problem lots of people have and build something lot of people need. Must you be the one building your product? Or like must you be the one that produce that thing?
Okay. That's a great question. Um, so if you notice, on the how to start a startup, that's from week 3 and week 4. I separated the different, or I highlighted the different steps of building a startup, which has to do with your idea, product, team, and execution. Now, there are products that are already available in the market, and there are products that are new to the market. As a founder, it's not bad to replicate a product that's already there in the market. But we urge most founders to build products that are not in the market because that's where the potential is. You can still succeed building products that are there in the market. You see it in fintechs. So many fintech applications are out there. So many of them. They basically do this they mostly do the same thing to process payments for people both locally and internationally. But you still find out that there's still room for more to come in or more to be improved on. Now we're having a wave of um, food tech startups that sell online. We have DoorDash, we have Jumia Foods, we have Strawdeck. There are so many of them. We have food courts. There's still room for improvement. You might look at a startup, pick up one thing that they are not improving on, and do it, and launch your startup, and you will still succeed. So what matters is your idea, your product, your team, and your execution, how you execute, and timing. Did I answer your question?
Yes, sir. I have one more.
Okay.
Please, must your startup always be a product? Could it be services?
Okay. When we say products, product is actually your services, your combined services. So as a startup, we use the term product to refer to as your services, like what the startup is doing. So yeah, your services are your products. So are we good?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So there are terms that are commonly used in the startup ecosystem, and these terms are essential for understanding the various aspects of launching and growing a startup as a startup founder or a potential startup founder. Now, I have created a couple of terms, and I'll just quickly go over them, and I would um, select a few of them that will explain better. But if you need clarity, you can also still um, indicate. So we have the MVP, minimum viable products. We have ROI. We have that's return on investment. We have B2B, business to business. We have B2C, business to consumers. And recently we have a term like B2B2C, which is business to business to consumers. I did not include that here. We have SaaS, software as a service. These are terms that are commonly used in startup ecosystem. We have CAC, not the CAC, but this one is customer acquisition cost. We have LTV, lifetime valuation. We have burn rates. We have pivots. We have seed funding. We have Series A, B, C funding. We have valuation. We have IPO, initial public offering. We have angel investor. We have venture capitalists. We have bootstrapping. We have accelerator. We have incubator. We have churn rates, and we have scalability. In the sense of a startup, these are the terms that you will most likely hear about, and you most likely find people using, or um, investors using, or whatever. But these are the terms that are basic for the startup ecosystem, and um, for you to go into that ecosystem, you need to familiarize with these terms and understand their basic meanings. I'll just I'll just quickly go over a few of them so you can understand. So the MVP, the minimum viable product, this simply means a version of your product that can be released to start learning process with consumers. So what your MVP means is, as you go through the ideation stage, you develop the product. Obviously, you have a team to develop that product. Now, for most startups, you have beta versions of your products, and you have the MVP of your, like, the minimum viable products. These are the initial product that you use to learn about the market. You use to learn about your users. The most important aspect of building a startup is your users. Every startup must have its users as every startup must have its users as the center of the startup. So with the MVP, you can understand your users better, because that opens a channel of communication with your initial users. So that is your minimum viable product. Let me quickly talk about SAS, SaaS. So software as a service, it's a software distribution model in which applications are hosted by a service provider and made available by to customers over the internet. Example, this application we're using to make this meeting, it's a SaaS software that we can use over the internet. That's also a term that you should familiarize with. I'll go into burn rates because most startups like face burn rates. So what burn rate means is the rate at which a company is spending its capital before generating a positive cash flow from operations. So, as a potential founder or entrepreneur going into the startup ecosystem or the startup world, you should be wary of the burn rate, the amount of money you spend, the amount of capital you're spending building the startup, as opposed to when you start getting revenue from your users. Pivot, the next one. As a startup, you should be open to pivoting. Startup founders, or let's say the most successful startup founders, are the ones that are open to change. Pivoting simply means a significant business change, often used to test a new approach regarding a startup business model or products after feedback. Now, here's the um, here's the connection. First, you brainstorm, get an idea, you develop it to a product, you get an MVP, then you launch that MVP, start getting feedback from users. During that process, you'll be experiencing burn rates whereby the money you're even using to buy data to code or to build your products it falls under your burn rate. Now, the process of getting feedback from your users or process of getting your product in the market would trigger you to pivot where necessary. And as an upcoming founder or an early founder, I want you to have the mindset of change and pivoting. That doesn't mean you lose track of your initial goal as a startup or your initial focus as a startup. You're only changing significant aspects of your business model to achieve your initial goal as a startup or to achieve your goal as a startup. So these are things you should understand. When you hear the word pivot, it means just tweaking your business model a little bit based off on the feedback you've gotten from the market or your users during your MVP stage. So I hope you understand. So the next is seed funding. Seed funding is mostly related to investment, and seed funding is basically the initial capital used to start a business, often coming from the founder's personal savings, your friends, family, or an angel investor. Let me go over it again. Seed funding is the initial capital used to start a business, often coming from the founder's personal savings, friends, family, or angel investors. So when you have an MVP, it's easy to get people to fund your startup. Why? Because they have something they can see, they have something they can use, they have something they can test. So it's easy to convince your friends and your family that, oh, I'm building this very cool product and I need seed funding from you people, from you. I need to XYZ amount of money as seed funding. So it's very important that you understand these terms, so you don't tie your startup into a pit hole whereby you have somebody telling you they want to invest in your startup for 50% of your startup and all of those things. We have a lot of people that are struggling with that now. But yeah, it's good to understand all of this funding series early in your startup journey. While you be more focused on building your products, also try to understand what these funding processes are, like the Series ABC funding. That's for when you've launched your startup, actually. Then the next I'll go on is the valuation of a startup. And that's basically determining the worth of your startup. So valuation is when you hear the term valuation, this startup is valued at XYZ amount, this startup is valued at 10 billion. It's basically the worth of that startup entirely. That's the valuation. You have the IPO. I think I used IPO later on in the course. So you have the IPO, which is initial public offering. That's when a startup has gone public. Um, Previously used the term angel investor. So it's only ideal that I just explain what an angel investor means. So basically, what an angel investor is an, let's say, an affluent individual who provides capital for a business startup, usually in exchange for convertible debt or ownership equity. So angel investors are people that give you money for seed funding. Let's just break it down that way. Your first funders, the seed funders, are mostly angel investors because they don't request for so much from you. They just request for a little bit equity, and they don't request for return on investment. They are that's why they use the word angel. They're like angels blessing your small business. So that's that. So you also have venture capitalists, but I won't go into that now. You have bootstrapping, which I'm going to go into later on in the course. So bootstrapping simply means the easiest and the fastest way to start your business, um, either by financing or by your business process or by your operating model. That's it, bootstrapping. So I'm going to go into that later on in the course. I will teach you how to bootstrap as a startup founder and an emerging business. So the next is accelerator. I know you've definitely heard the word accelerator programs, incubator programs. So what the accelerator means is simply a program that supports startups through mentorship, networking, and sometimes capital. Now, an accelerator program helps you network as a startup founder, mentors you as a startup founder, which is what I think that's what we are doing now. And they train you technical training as a startup founder to sharpen your tech skills and all of those things. Sometimes most acceleration programs, they give you that seed funding for your startup. All of these things, all of these all of these services that are rendered by these accelerator programs are to achieve one specific goal, which is to help you grow fast as a startup. So that's the idea of an accelerator program. So incubation. An incubator is an organization that is designed to help startups succeed by providing workspace, seed funding, mentoring, and training. An incubator is like uh the word incubator, you can check the meaning of the word incubator. Basically, it's like storing something or nurturing something to grow. So in the startup ecosystem, an incubator incubates a startup, nurture them, support them, help them build, and help them grow. Provide workspace where they can sit down and build their startup. Provide the necessary tools for the startup to succeed. And we have a couple of them around. So the last, scalability. I'm not going to go into churn rates for now, later, but the last is scalability. When you hear the term scalability, it simply means the capability of your startup to grow its business model to larger scales efficiently. So understand this. I've been emphasizing on the word growth since I started the lecture, and this scalability is going to be often used to describe that, because as a startup, you need to be scalable, like really, really scalable, and at a fast pace, and also efficiently. So, is there any question regarding the previous slide? I know you have a couple of questions you want to ask.
Okay, sir. Um, I have a question.
Okay.
Okay, so we are talking about the terms used in the startup ecosystem, and you said something that, please, can you go back to the previous slide? Okay, so thank you. You said something about pivoting, whereby a startup founder should be able to accept change. So, what about a situation where I and my team are working on the solution? We've invested so much in this particular solution, but at the end of the day, we discover that the users are not really going for this, and we've not just invested time, we've also invested money, most of our capital. You also talked about burn rate. So how do we navigate through that situation?
Okay. Great. So, the startup model leverages on Scrum model or Scrum principles, Scrum and Agile principles. That's somewhat intermediate, but let me explain it to you. As a founder, you and your team, you're building a startup. I made mention of your MVP. That's the first product that you're sending to the market. So your MVP is a lighter version of your product, of your startup. So you share that MVP with your users. You gather feedback and insights. So before you invest so much time, so much so much resources into the startup, you must have gotten significant insight or feedback from your MVP stage. So the aspect of pivoting is when you're getting those feedbacks from the MVP, you're going back to your business model to tweak a couple of things. Now, if you are very convinced that your idea that your team and you are building is the way forward or is going to solve a lot of problems. Getting feedback from your users is only going to help you enhance that idea. So you use your MVP stage to gather a lot of feedback. Most startups that skip the MVP stage and launch their startups um, to wider users, they tend to not succeed because after launching, you have to go back to the drawing board when your users are not there, when your users are not using your product. To be a successful startup, you must build your product around your users. So from your ideation, from your planning stage to the product stage, it must be centered around your users and how you can solve their problems. So yeah, did I answer that?
Okay, sir, thank you. Another question, you were explaining the accelerator and incubator. Is there any tangible difference between them?
Actually, there's a slight difference between the accelerator and the incubator. Let me go over it again. The accelerator programs, or the accelerator is a program that supports startup through mentorship, networking, sometimes capital, and it helps them grow fast. While incubator is designed to help the startup to succeed by providing a workspace. Accelerator programs don't provide workspaces for startups. They can mentor you virtually. They can they can design programs for you to leverage on or to partake in, and they can look source for funding for your startup. Let's say seed funding for your startup. But incubator programs are like your first offices as a startup. Building your MVP, most times, most startups they find it difficult to hire spaces for rent for their business. So these incubator programs or these incubator organizations, they provide you with these spaces for you to build your products from as a startup. You can have an agreement for like a year or 2 years, but that's the slight difference between an accelerator and an incubator.
Okay, so if I were to start a startup, if I were to start a startup today, would you advise me to go for an accelerator program or an incubator program?
Okay, you can actually go for both, because most incubator programs, they incubate startups that already have an MVP. I hope you understand that. Accelerator programs, they work with you from your idea stage till
Yes, sir.
when you build your MVP. Incubator programs, sometimes they work with you from your idea stage, but mostly they start from your MVP and they start building you from there, helping you to scale.
Okay,
So
so if I'm
I,
just starting, sorry.
yeah,
So if I'm just starting out, then I should go for the accelerator because they are going to help me build from the ground up.
exactly, exactly. You can also go for there are some incubator programs that also do that, but mostly the accelerator programs that are designed for that to help you build from ground up, from ideation stage.
Okay, sir, thank you.
Okay.
So I have the question.
Okay.
in line with what he just asked. So what about from the angle of the organization? Can the organization bid it to, like, be an incubator, and also provide acceleration program?
Yes, actually, yes. There are organizations that do that. And one notable organization is Y Combinator. They are more than just an acceleration or incubator. They are a combination of both. So yes, there are organizations that have the capacity to offer acceleration programs and also to incubate startups. Yes, there is.
All right. Thank you.
So any other question?
Okay, sir. Please, can you give us an example of some of these organizations?
Okay. One example is Google for Startups. You can check it online. Google for Startups. They offer acceleration programs by designing trainings, courses, and grants, and they also offer incubation programs. Second organization is Y Combinator. Y Combinator offers way more than just acceleration and incubation. They also offer Series A funding for startups. They also offer seed funding, which is part of incubation. So for Y Combinator, basically, it's an American firm actually that offers these services. Basically, as a startup, they have accelerator programs for you, courses that you can take as a startup to upskill yourself, upskill your products, to build your products. And then when you're selected into the incubation program, they incubate you for 3 months. In that 3 months, they give you technical support, they give you networks, they give you money, funding, and they help you to scale your products. Now, get the difference. For accelerating, if they are, if for the acceleration programs by the same organization, they give you courses that you can take from the comfort of your house. You take these courses, you build your skills, you build your products. Sometimes they give you grants that you can use to set up your startup. But when you're being incubated, they go from just the acceleration to giving you a space to work for 3 months, technical support, helping you build your product, giving you network of other investors, giving you network of users, and then helping you scale. So that's the thing. And for a company like Y Combinator, they can get you from idea stage to incubation without stress because they have the capacity to do that. So there are other organizations. You have the innovation support organizations in Nigeria that offer acceleration services, and we also have some other incubation company organizations in Nigeria. So yeah, there are other programs like that. So
Thank you, sir.
yeah. So any other question, or should we continue?
I continue, sir.
All right. All right. So startups in Nigeria. Um, we have about over 62 startups in Nigeria, and 80% of these startups are based in Lagos and into fintech, financial technology. Example of these startups are Paystack, Flutterwave, Clever, Chowdeck, Food Court. I know you've heard about these startups before, and And yeah, so we are going to talk about them and a lot more of the startups in Nigeria. So one common thing about all of these startups, and I'll also add global giants to that list. One thing that is common between Paystack, Flutterwave, Andela, Chowdeck, Amazon, Google, Facebook, Stripe is what? Growth. The ability for a startup to grow really fast cannot be ignored. Like that is the most crucial part of a startup. All of these businesses that are here, all of these companies, these startups that are here, they have the ability to grow fast. Paystack, for example, Paystack is a payment gateway company that processes transactions between two businesses or business to consumers, either B2B or B2C. Now, from the comfort of your home, you can easily order for stuffs online and pay using Paystack. Most times, we don't even know that we're using Paystack to pay for these things, but they're using Paystack. You can stay here and purchase something online with your card using Paystack. Now, in the early days of Paystack, when they were starting out, the only payment solution that was in Nigeria as at then, or let's say the most popular payment solution that was in Nigeria as at then, is InterSwitch. And as a business, to register with InterSwitch was quite difficult. Like, not like that difficult, but it was tedious because they required a whole lot of documentation papers from businesses to register to use InterSwitch. So when the founders of Paystack came up with Paystack idea, they were like, how can we help small businesses that don't have either the funds or the time or the documentation to be able to receive payments from people across the country? How can we help them? That was the birth of Paystack. So they decided to build a gateway that will help these businesses to access funding. And the catch there was you can now register with Paystack in less than 15 minutes. Whereas with InterSwitch, it took weeks for them to even get an approval to start using InterSwitch for their businesses. But with Paystack, you could do that in less than 15 minutes. Now, that service alone skyrocketed their growth as a company because more businesses are beginning to be like, oh, this thing is really fast, super cool to use, and I can still receive my money. So they spread the word across, like business to business. That's mostly called word of mouth marketing. They grew so big that now they've been acquired by Stripe, an American company that does the same services. They call that exiting. They've exited with Stripe. But yeah, the idea is that when you're building a startup, I'm not saying just fintech, but when you're building a startup, you need to consider how it can benefit your users and how fast that startup is going to work for your users. That's what um, they did, and now they are one of the biggest in the world, not just Nigeria, because they are outside of Nigeria. They're in so many countries in Africa and outside of Africa. Same goes to Flutterwave. Same goes to Andela. So next, we're going to talk about startups and unicorns. Have you heard of the word unicorn? Or is this the first time you're hearing of it? Who can tell me what a unicorn is? Okay,
A unicorn.
so basically, a unicorn in the startup ecosystem is basically a company or a startup, like which is a private company that has a valuation of over $1 billion. And it will surprise you to know that there are over 1,200 unicorns globally, and 5 of those unicorns are from Nigeria. Exactly. Are you shocked? So, so now let's do numbers. 1 billion, $1 billion worth of a company. 5 of those companies are Nigerians, are Nigerian companies. Those founders are young, and they started young also. The unicorn founders, that will be part of your exercise. Now, these are an example of unicorns globally. The one with asterisks are unicorns that have gone public. Airbnb, Facebook, Google, they've gone public. Unicorns in Nigeria, you have OP, which is valued at about $2 billion. You have Flutterwave in Nigeria, which is valued at about 1 billion. And you have Andela, which is valued at about 1.5 billion. There are also other unicorns in Nigeria, but you are going to look those ones up as your classwork, like after this presentation. Now, it is also interesting to know that Stripe, the ones that bought Paystack, are valued over 70 billion. And it is more interesting to know that Epic Games, I don't know how many of you play games. So for the gamers in the house, you should be familiar with Epic Games. Exactly. They are valued at about $22.5 billion. That is huge. That is very huge. Now, I don't think we have a lot of gaming companies in Africa, talk more of in Nigeria. But the gaming industry is a very lucrative industry to start a business in or to start a startup in. And you can see that in Epic Games. And one thing all of them have in common as unicorns is growth. They have the ability to grow fast and rapidly. Now, that is the end of this presentation. So we are going to dive into an actual classwork. First, we are going to first of all research right now and then the unicorns we have in Nigeria, all of the 5 unicorns we have in Nigeria, their founders, their location, and their the industry that they're serving. So I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to do that, then we can continue. Then this second assignment is going to be till next week when we meet again. So you're going to research 60 startups in Nigeria, their founders, their location, and their industries. So let's get to work.